Hi, I'm Patty.
I'm Kim Michelle.
And I'm Jill. Welcome to our podcast. It's a great day to talk.
Because honestly, what day isn't a great day to talk?
So join us in our conversation.
A Great Day to Talk is brought to you by St. George Design, offering complete website design, social media management, search engine optimization, Google and Facebook ad management, and many other digital and print marketing services. stgeorgedesign.com. And by Richardson Brothers Custom Homes, third-generation builders who have been building custom homes in southern Utah for over 25 years. They will take your dream home from concept to completion. Contact richardsonbrothers.com. The April Gates Group and Zion Canyon Real Estate have been specializing in helping southern Utah clients buy and sell property for over 18 years. We can help you too. Call or text April today. 435-632-8869. 435-632-8869.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 45 of our podcast. And I hope you heard that lovely what? And you were like, oh, I know that voice. That is our dear friend, Miss Jill, who is back with us. We're so glad. And I'm going to share my gladness for Patty, who now is not with us.
Yeah, it's like, if you look at the three of us up here, one of these things is not like the other. So our redhead,
our tall redhead
is
not
now
here.
Tall with a beard.
Yeah,
goatee.
exactly.
Bald head.
But we definitely want to welcome Miss Jill back.
Oh,
we
thank
love you and
you.
adore you, and we have missed you tremendously.
I have
and,
missed you.
You know, the lyrical part of the show has just not been the same.
Oh, well, with my scratchy puberty voice, it ought to sound really fantastic today.
Ooh, extra special.
Yes.
Something to look forward to.
That's me. That's me.
Yep, exactly.
Hello, I missed you.
Yeah,
I
we missed you.
and I missed
Yeah.
Patty, and I missed you, Scott.
That's good to
It's
see
so
you.
good to see you too.
I missed you too.
Oh, Sean, I missed you too, Sean. I'm so glad to see you. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
And you know, life-changing experiences give you a lot of perspective on things, and we in our family had a life-changing experience, and super grateful for friends, for family, for health, for healthcare systems, and for all good things that we enjoy every single minute of the day.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. It quickly puts things in perspective.
Yes.
And, you know, it's not a one and done kind of thing. You know, we get ourselves together and we power through what needs to happen in the moment to get us through there, but we're not done. And so part of this is preparing ourselves kind of for the long haul a little bit, and making sure that as we take care of everybody else, we're also taking care of ourselves.
I don't know who that might have been directed to, but duly noted. Duly noted.
Yeah, and it's actually, it fits right in with what we're going to talk about today. And so today is World Sarcoidosis Day.
Did you say that right?
Close.
Sarcoidosis.
Yeah, close enough.
I had to break it down into syllables and spell it phonetically.
Sarcoidosis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you use that in a sentence, please?
Yes. Sarcoidosis.
Today is World Sarcoidosis
Day.
I didn't add another I.
not
The origin of the word,
That
please.
is
The origin of the word is
Scar.
oh yeah,
It is not
there we go.
actually, because that
but
would
that
be
makes sense.
SCAR, but it does make sense.
Yeah.
And you may be thinking, well, that's kind of a weird thing to be talking about, which it potentially is. It's a relatively rare disease that, but it does afflict 200,000 people roughly in the United States. It more outside of the United States, of course. And we are seeing an increase in the number of diagnoses illnesses that take place. In addition to that, a lot of times people are symptom free. So you could be afflicted with it and not even know that you have it. And if that's the case and you're symptom free, then I'm really happy for you that you don't know you have it because you're symptom free. And so because it is that world sarcoidosis.
Yeah.
Awareness Day today. We thought, well, let's take a moment and maybe talk about that, and also then talk about not just the disease itself, but managing that and how it affects families and
caretakers
and all of the stakeholders involved.
Yes.
And so it was like, if only we could find someone who could maybe come on and share the podcast with us who has something to share about that. And then it was like, oh yeah, I could roll over this morning and say, hey, Scott.
Tap, tap, tap. Have I got a plan for you?
Yeah. And so we're really lucky to have Scott with us on the podcast today so that he can remind me how to say it. Maybe I have a mental block because I don't want to acknowledge it, which could be very, very true. But Scott was actually diagnosed in 2002. And I'm going to let you kind of share that experience, and especially in this community that we lived in, it's so rare that even getting the initial diagnosis was somewhat difficult. So why don't you just go ahead and share with us your experience around that, as well as your symptoms around it and how it affects you and your daily life.
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me again. It's nice to be
keep
back
the
with
mic
the two
with
of you.
Right, Sean?
Keep the mic right there.
Gotta
Right there.
practice.
Perfect. Well, I guess my journey began, like I said, 2002. So 20 years ago now. And I was in that category of people that were either symptom-free or they were living in denial. They had some symptoms, but they refused to believe anything was going on. And just happened to be out playing basketball with some friends one day and decided to set a block and take a charge from one of the other players. And he went in the air, caught me with a knee right in the chest. And I went down immediately to the ground in quite a bit of pain, and figured in the moment I'd probably busted a few ribs. So they ran me immediately over to the hospital and did some chest x-rays to see what was going on. And I'll never forget the technician coming back into the room, the x-ray technician, with tears just rolling down his cheeks.
Oh, my word.
And I went, wow, this probably isn't a good sign. And he said, I just saw your x-rays. And he said, I could probably lose my job for telling you this, but I think you have lung cancer.
Oh, my gosh.
Which was a, pretty devastating thing to hear in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So they immediately sent me up for a biopsy about a week later. So we got to live with the stress of just wondering if I had lung cancer for that period of time. And so they did the biopsy. The biopsy came back. And that day I heard a word I'd never heard before. The doctor came in and he said, well, I have good news for you. The good news is you do not have lung cancer. He said, the not so good news is that you have a condition called sarcoidosis. And I remember the doctor saying it, I'm really surprised. I'm looking at your history here. And, typically the questions we ask someone to determine whether they have sarcoidosis is we ask them, have you ever been a smoker?
Right.
And I said, I'll be really honest. I probably had 2, maybe 3 cigarettes in my lifetime.
Right.
Have you ever
See
worked
that
around?
Kids never smoke a single cigarette.
I'll tell you, I struggle today when I do see people smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Because I just know if they were in the condition I was in, they wouldn't take that risk. They always ask me if I ever worked around asbestos or heavy chemicals, which I, as far as I know, never had. Then the next question is always interesting. They say, and you're not a black woman.
Yeah.
Say, well,
Are you?
as far as I know, I'm not. And they said, well, those are the categories in which it most commonly shows up.
Yeah.
Again, I guess the numbers now are 200,000 in the U.S.
My goodness.
I don't think they were diagnosed that high 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah, no.
But started doing a little bit of research. My first question was always, great, so now I have this condition. What can I do about it? And the answer was always, well, we have no idea how you got it.
Yeah.
And there's really no way to treat it.
Oh my goodness.
So for quite a few years, I just went on. The doctor would say, and what is it you do for a living? And at the time I'd say I'm a seminar facilitator. Mm-hmm. Well, what does that look like? And I'd say, well, I basically stand in front of the room for like 8 to 10 hours a day and talk to crowds of people. And I would chuckle when the doctors would say, no, you don't. Uh-huh. And I'd say, well, yes, I do. And then the response was always, well, nobody with the condition you have as serious as you have it does that for a living. And I said, well, got one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And so exactly what happens? You have it in your lungs, but it can be really most commonly in any soft tissue. It can also be on the skin. Yeah. But hearts, lung, you can get it in your organs, throat, your esophagus. You can actually get it. But for you, it's in both of your lungs. And how does that manifest? I mean, when they're looking at an X-ray, what are they seeing when they're looking at the X-ray?
Lungs in an X-ray should just be nice, dark tissue. Mm-hmm. My X-rays, if you look at them, I have one lung and about a third of my other lung that if you looked at the X-ray, you'd swear a colony of spiders had gone in
there
and just started putting webs.
Wow.
So they're just these huge areas of white fibers, that happen to be in my lungs, and it generates scar tissue. And anywhere you have that scar tissue, the lung just can't function.
Right.
So I basically have the lung capacity of probably about a 5 or 6 year old boy.
And you're all but 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
So,
but most people would never know it. It's not that I'm 7 feet tall. They probably know.
Yeah.
6 foot 5.
6'5". That's like 7 feet to me.
Most people would never know I have the condition.
Well,
People that have known me for years say, I never knew you had anything going on. So.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
they call those granulomas, right? Yeah. And they almost kind of look like small little tumorous.
Yeah, I read that they are nodules.
Yeah.
All over the place.
Yeah.
And as I read about it and learned about it, let's be honest, I've known about it for 20 years as well, but not to the depth that I know now.
Yeah.
It did remind me of mesothelioma, the scar tissue element, and how it fills the lungs. And, we have my grandfather passed from that, and my sister-in-law's mother just recently passed from mesothelioma as well. And so it without the cancer word in there,
right?
It just reminds me so much of what that disease does.
I had a doctor one time tell me about a third of the people that have sarcoidosis will go their entire life and never know they even have it. About another third will be diagnosed with sarcoidosis, and it'll progress. It'll just continually get worse and worse and worse and worse. And the other third will be diagnosed with it, but there really won't be much progression of it. There won't be much change over it. So I kept my fingers crossed. I know I have it. I've been diagnosed. I just pray it doesn't get worse.
Yeah.
And there were times along the way we were nervous when we were living in the Bay Area, near San Francisco. I'd go to the hospital there in San Rafael about once a week, and there was a time where I was being evaluated for a lung transplant.
Right. I remember that.
That was a bit scary. And a doctor one time looked at me and said, "What you have, we define as end stage sarcoidosis." So doing a little bit of research on that.
That doesn't mean he's like barely standing on the stage.
No.
Just so you know, that's not what that phrase means. And nobody clearly wants to be hearing that in any kind of condition. Especially my first conversation was really, well, can't we just go in there and cut that stuff out? Right. And they're like, yes, we can do that. But to what end? Because you'd still just be left with a third of a lung. And
sure.
So the hope is it can go into its own remission, or at least a remissive state, so that it's not progressing. Scott is not in that state where we know it will never progress, because and it can be inflamed. Like if you breathe in dust particles and stuff like that, it can agitate your granulomas, right, and it can cause them to swell up and that kind of stuff in the lung. Yeah.
That's the other part that I read that was really fascinating, is that it's an inflammation disease.
Yes.
It's actually defined now as an autoimmune.
They do believe that.
And that's what I went looking for as I go down the rabbit hole, which is what I've been doing a lot of these days.
Yes.
Going down research rabbit holes.
You can treat me anytime.
Anytime.
With your knowledge base.
With my 12 certificates hanging on the wall. But that was what I read, was that it is inflammatory. Yep. And makes sense, because I did go looking for the word autoimmune and hadn't run into that.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. And it is every time we would move to a different location or, change our insurance, so we had new providers, every time we would have the conversation, every single time it was like, oh, we'll do our own tests, because they just didn't believe that that's what he had, because he just does not meet any of the risk group categories that you would typically see affiliated with the condition.
And be honest, you were still able to work a room with little and limited lung capacity.
Still do now and then.
Yeah, he still does. And honestly, I don't know how, because if you're sitting next to him, you probably can't hear it. But even today, some days it's more prevalent, but even today you can hear the heaviness in his breathing, which is one of the
it's just being
signs.
Close to you, baby.
No, it's not hot and heavy. It's just. But you do have that wheeziness, so then you just really get to be mindful about now other conditions, COPD and those types of things that if paired with this, then really create a situation that you have to really keep an eye on all the time.
Tell me, okay, so that's the general information about that. Tell me how it has affected you. You mentioned that you went to the doctor once a week, had tests run, checking for potential lung transplant. How in your personal life, hobbies, you said you were playing basketball when the initial knee to chest experience took place. What things changed for you as you learned more and started to acknowledge that, oh, yeah, maybe this breathing thing has been a thing that I've just kind of avoided a bit or a lot?
When I say playing basketball, I probably use the phrase loosely.
Well, playing it more than you play now.
I was on the basketball court with a bunch of friends. But even at the time, I remember really struggling, trying to get from one end of the court to the other end of the court and back. Mm-hmm. I'd get winded pretty easily. And even today, if I'm climbing a pretty good flight of stairs, I get to stop at the top of the stairs and catch my breath. And, several things. If I play golf, I wouldn't be walking the course.
Right.
I'd be riding in a cart. So, there are limitations. And probably the most common thing is if I'm anywhere with Kim Michelle, I'll push it. And I probably push it more than I even should. Mm-hmm. And she'll say, slow down, breathe. Mm-hmm. So, I still do some of the things I once did, not all the things that I once did. I don't do anything probably as quickly as I once did. I try to pace myself when I can, but.
Which sounds like great advice to give to anybody who's struggling with a lung issue.
Yeah.
Or any kind of.
Or any issue.
Any kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Pushing ourselves is definitely, I don't know. Is it what word am I looking
It's
for?
almost a badge of honor, right?
Yeah.
That you
Yeah.
can say that you pushed yourself beyond.
Yeah.
And I do believe that growth happens in that space that's uncomfortable for us. So choosing into uncomfortable is one thing. But I think the accolades around you really, the glory comes in the pushing yourself harder and harder and harder. I think that's something that across the board I get to reconsider. The willingness to ask for support, all of those kinds of things are more difficult to do when you embrace I just got to push on through.
Right.
And I think that's one reason why we wanted to do this show, because it just happens to be the World Awareness Day. So that seemed appropriate. But the other reason is because if you're not dealing with this in your family, you're probably dealing with some other kind of chronic condition, meaning that there isn't an eminent time frame associated with whatever the condition is that you have, but that it is chronic, and it's not just going to most likely go away. And it's something that you're going to get to live with your family and your partner or whoever is afflicted for the rest of your life. So creating strategies that can work and can accommodate where you're at so that you can still find ways to enjoy being outdoors when you're not climbing up hills.
Right.
That's really one of the reasons why we got our electric bikes, because it provided an opportunity for us to be able to share time outside, doing something that is, we're going to call physical in our world, but that gave us a safety net,
Right.
so that if for whatever reason the breathing became difficult, you were safe.
Yes.
You had a way to be able to accommodate.
It gave me an opportunity to keep up with Kim Michelle without having to pedal.
Yeah.
Well, the keeping up part on both ends is really, like you said, I mean, this is a chronic issue in and of itself.
It is. It's like a badge of honor, really.
Yeah.
Like we wear
Martyrdom.
it around like
Martyrdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Even when gosh, I hate that word, but obviously at some level, when you're unwilling to set some boundaries and then take on way more than what is probably healthy for anyone in your world, not just for you, but for anybody who has to live with you, then at some level, what you perceive you're gaining from that, the acknowledgement or the awareness, or, you go get them. How can you do all of that? That kind of space, there's got to be a reward better than that.
Right.
Yeah.
So on that note, let me ask you, as the family and spouse of dear Scott, who is then officially diagnosed with a chronic illness that doesn't have an end goal. It's a unknown.
Right.
The crystal ball is lost at the dry cleaners again.
Dang it.
What kinds of things, as his wife, how did that change your life?
I think I might not even have totally dealt with it, honestly, because for me, when those kinds of things happen, then I just dig in and do whatever has to be done. I will say that for anyone out there who ever thinks they're the worst person in the world because you're dealing with somebody who has a chronic illness, and you know that there's not a darn thing that they can do about having it, and you ever feel some energy that is less than gracious, you ever feel resentful about this, I'm going to have to do this and this and this because that can't go there, I'm just going to give you a big old hug of grace right now and compassion. not just for the person who has the chronic condition, but for yourself. Because to be in that space that says, gosh, I wish that maybe this isn't the space that I was in, that I feel like I have the responsibilities that come with who I am, and now I have this as well. Only in those really stressful moments am I in that space where I'm less than gracious. And then I beat myself up because
Guilt.
Shame. How could I even be thinking that or feeling that way when I'm blessed to have him every day that I have him, and all of those kinds of things.
Well, and the other question might be, a better question might be, how can you be human and not have those thoughts from time to time?
But I'm superhuman.
Right.
You're a superhuman,
Right.
for sure.
Because you can tell me something, right, Kim Michelle, and the same rules don't apply for you. I can encourage you in some realm.
Yeah.
And the same rules don't apply to me.
That's true.
And so that superhuman take on the world, I can do everything. I've lately been using the word martyr.
Yeah.
Which for me just translates to no boundaries.
Yeah.
That's like you said, you've got to have grace, and you have to let go of shame.
Yeah.
And you
absolutely.
have to
Guilt,
recognize
all of it.
That humans are feeling. I'm going to quote Brené. Humans are feeling creatures, not thinking creatures.
Yeah.
They are feeling first and thinking 10%.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of dealing with any chronic condition, I could go years and years and years in denial and resisting the fact that I have it, and being angry with the circumstance and with God and everything else involved in it. But I choose to look at it and just say, I'm as tall as I am for a reason. I'm as hairy as I am for a reason.
Which is very.
Everything is. That's how God designed me. I'll never forget. I've gone almost my entire life really being frustrated with my handwriting. I was meant to be a doctor because I have a doctor's handwriting to the max.
That's fantastic.
Like they say, the one thing you'll always do better than anyone else on the planet is read your own handwriting.
Right.
And that's true. It's like nobody else could read mine. And I remember being in the seminar room one time, and there was a young man. We had a writing exercise. He was supposed to write a page worth of notes on something. And he said, but I can't write. I don't write. He said, if I say the words, can someone write those words for me? And the facilitator I was with pointed to me and said, well, why don't you write for him? And my thought was, well, if I write it, he won't be able to read it. But I did. I sat there and I took notes on what he was saying. And he came back in the next morning just with tears in his eyes. And he said, what a blessing. You have my handwriting.
Oh, my word.
I've never been able to read somebody, my own handwriting, but I could read yours perfectly. And I went,
wow,
that was in accordance to God's plan,
Yeah.
So I think for some reason God slowed me down just enough that I could make the difference I'm meant to make. It might look different than it might look, but going victim to it's not going to help anyone.
True.
Not going to change anything.
Yeah.
Only make it worse, I believe.
Find the blessing in it. Like Kim Michelle, we'd go to the mall or we'd go shopping, and the most common thing I would hear is, slow down. Let me keep up with you.
Right.
Now it's like she's waving back. No, she doesn't. But, I feel like she's always waiting for me, and there's a happy medium in there somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Kim Michelle, what does it look like as the caregiver?
I think that the one area that, this is 20 years later, and I still know, it's been a challenging couple of years. Scott had a really serious blood clot, the largest they'd ever seen here.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's
Go big or go
that's
home.
how
That's
he
right.
rolls. And then he had a pulmonary embolism off of that. And then he fell, and maybe someday we'll talk about this, but had a traumatic brain injury just over a year ago.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of challenging things there. And I would always say that the lesson, there'll always be a pathway to the lesson you're meant to learn. And if you refuse to learn the lesson, then you'll be given another pathway to the lesson.
I hate that, because that is patience is my continued lesson.
Yeah.
Over and over.
And so I think that the lesson is not to be in grace. I think I really work to be in that space, more in grace with Scott probably than I am with myself, more compassionate with grace with Scott than I probably am with myself. Although there are times when I know, gosh, I'm really being short right now, and I am aware of it, and I'm not to the place yet where I resolve it and can stop being short, other than just stop talking. But I think the one lesson that continues to be available to me for me to really embrace is that taking time for me.
Right.
And not feeling bad about it, not feeling like I'm letting somebody else down, that there's a better use of my time than just taking my favorite book and sitting in the backyard and doing nothing but reading. Yeah. So I think that from the caretaker standpoint, I think that's one of the greatest lessons still for me to be able to perfect.
Well, let me tell you, you mentioned the give yourself. There's a couple of things. So this whole idea of caregiver, right? And we know, even in our own professions, in our own lives, we're supposed to take care of ourselves. So we've already kind of touched on how that just doesn't really happen. We push instead of sit back.
Yeah.
But I was looking for advice for caregivers, and you mentioned a couple of them on here. And now look, I have to make it really big because
Reading a book out on the porch.
oh my gosh. Yep. So it says, take time for yourself and your own needs. Watch for signs of stress such as impatience, loss of appetite, or difficulty with sleep. Don't know anybody like that.
Yeah.
Concentration or memory. Pay attention to changes in your mood, a loss of interest in usual activities, or an inability to accomplish usual tasks. So this came from the University of California, San Francisco, I think is where I grabbed this.
That probably is true. They do a ton of medical work there at that. Yeah. A lot of research.
Give yourself credit. That is another one. Give yourself credit. The care you give does make a difference. Share your feelings with family members or other caregivers, or join a support group. And I might add to that, find a really good therapist or social worker who is sensitive and experienced. I might add that as for my own note to self.
I would agree with that too. In terms of, I started reading a book. Maybe You Should Talk to Someone is the book and it's her, she's a therapist, and it's her story around her seeking therapy herself when her relationship ends. And really just the idea that therapy is uniquely reserved for a certain group of people, I think is one that we should be challenging across the board.
Oh my gosh. Well, we definitely know, right, that mental health care is a luxury and it shouldn't be.
No, absolutely.
The brain is an organ.
That's right.
And just like every other organ in the body, I think that the chemistry and the wiring of the brain needs its own set of specialists.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're so tough on yourself. I want you to know, I'd be the very first to nominate you for sainthood. You've been through a lot. There are mornings I wake up and roll over, and I'm just glad you're still there. Because I know what a struggle it is, personally, and for the person that's there by your side, being your caregiver, and I don't want this to be a downer for everybody.
No.
If nothing else, I think part of the message today is I was diagnosed with this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
If there's someone that gets the diagnosis tomorrow, I don't want them just to be devastated by it. Hope, pray, take care of yourself. Allow others to take care of you as well.
Yeah.
And have hope. What was your definition of hope the other day?
It is the
expectation
of joy.
Oh my gosh.
I
love that.
I had a training partner one time that used to say, hope is the raw material of losers.
Oh.
And I think what he meant by that was these people that never take action to fulfill a dream, but they live in the hope that someday it would happen. But it's like there's a hope with a big H and a hope with a little h.
Right.
Like the capital hope is that expectation of joy. I'm not hoping for it.
Right.
But I totally expect in our relationship that there'll be joy in the moment. There'll be joy tomorrow. There'll be joy 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
Keep your mic at.
There'll be joy when I don't keep
I'm
my
trying,
mic right
Sean.
in front of
You're
my
gonna get in
face.
trouble.
But that constant expectation of joy.
Yeah,
Regardless
I
of
totally
circumstance.
agree. The biggest message I would say, and I think you probably can embrace this with what's going on with you as well, is that different doesn't mean less than. Different doesn't mean worse. It just means different. That's all.
Yeah.
And usually when I'm in it, it's because I have an expectation of how it's supposed to look based on how it's looked before. And that is what then I know, okay, I get to release off of that and be really open to how amazing it could look now, because it could look 1,000 times better than I could even imagine or it's ever been before.
Sure.
It's just different. That's all.
And isn't that the truth? When we sit down and think about it and talk with others, there are more of us who get the opportunity to be caregivers than what we like to be known on the outside. Do you know what I mean? And so, yes, Scott, your diagnosis was 20 years ago. And Kim Michelle, you've been the helpmeet. I'll never use helpmeet. I hate that word. Of that, right? And it's all of us that at whatever level it is, maybe it's not sarcoidosis. Did I say it right? Sarcoidosis.
There you go.
Sarcoidosis. Maybe it's, maybe it is a mental health issue. Maybe it is a traumatic brain injury. Maybe it is a stroke. Maybe it is a car accident that puts someone in a wheelchair for an unknown amount of, we all know somebody that has, and at some point we all will get the opportunity to be in one role or the other. And I think
or
that
both.
both. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that these characteristics or suggestions for caregivers, I believe, also goes for the person with the chronic illness.
Yep.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Let people help you. Eat balanced, get sleep, make sleep a priority. All those good things, I think it goes for both sides of the party. I think that it is just another life lesson in being human.
Yeah.
Find a good therapy, like paint gnomes.
Paint gnomes.
Paint
Yes.
gnomes.
Did you guys see my new gnome? I have a beautiful birthday gnome from Mr. Scott that's on the table, but it was like right in my face. And you couldn't see my cute face.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, see? There's my gnome. Happy birthday.
He's the whiz.
I love whoever he is, but I love the sunflower the most. He makes me so happy.
Yeah.
So these are the things. Fill your time with happy things. Fill your time with positive thinking. I love the big H, little h, hope.
Yeah.
It's such a lesson for caregivers and those that are in the position of having a chronic illness.
Yep. And even though some things may change, some things may look different. Some things will never change. Scott's love for me, never in doubt. The strength I get from my besties here, Jill and Patty, that will never change, right? The love from my family, never change. Always
love
absolutes.
from your family.
Right. Those things, those are absolutes. So I think sometimes it's easy to focus on what has been lost instead of how beautiful and how blessed we are for the things that we have. And that's just a reset.
Right.
Right. That's just a quick reset. So.
Well, and the tables turn. It was not more than about 10 years ago that Kim Michelle went through her episode with breast cancer.
Right.
Yes.
And she's been breast cancer free ever since then. And,
Yep.
For a pretty extended period of time there, I got to be the caregiver.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is something I think I kind of enjoy doing anyway.
Yeah.
You have an old soul and a tender soul.
Yeah.
And a big heart, Scott.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I think you would fill that role quite nicely.
Yeah. Absolutely wonderful. That's true.
So.
Yeah.
Oh.
So hopefully, here, the last thing I'll say on this is that it's just another reason to be out in the world and just be kind because you don't know who is going through something. You just may never know. And your kind words, your graciousness in a moment can mean everything for that person where they are. So go out in the world and, if nothing else, choose to be kind.
Right.
Yeah.
Be human and be kind, please, and thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we
And
could always
celebrate
more.
life. I think the purpose of World Sarcoidosis Day isn't to be down, isn't to be sad.
I don't think that's where we are at all.
To celebrate.
Yeah, it is. And I like knowing more about all different things. And Scott, I've known about this for 20 years and this opportunity to take this World Day to learn more about it has really been beneficial for me.
Yeah.
It's interesting what certain situations, what you learn in certain situations that you never anticipate. And so I, thank you for sharing your journey into it and your journey through it.
Yeah.
And to know I'm not alone in it. When sarcoidosis got the most attention was after September 11th.
Oh my gosh, that's what
after
all the
first
firefighters.
responders.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's even some conversation about COVID and this disease and whether there's conversation now. The word's out there. I hear it more this year than I've probably ever heard it used before. So it's just, it's just something to be aware of and mindful of. So.
And knowledgeable of and supportive of.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to thank Jill. We're so happy. Yay!
I'm so happy to be back.
And of course, we want to thank Scott for coming and
Thank you,
being
Scott.
Vulnerable like he always is, and just a joy. And sometime we'll come on here and just talk about something hilarious because he's really the funniest person I know in the whole world.
You need to meet more people.
Or we'll have to censor some stuff. One of the things that we did want to just mention is that we are going to go on our summer schedule. I know we're not quite to summer, but if you talk to the kids at school, they think we are.
Yeah.
So we're going to move to kind of our summer schedule, which is going to be twice a month for the live podcast. And so that's going to be the second and the fourth Wednesday of every month. And in the interim, be looking for some vlogging or blogging to keep you engaged with where we are and what we're doing. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you send us a vlog or a blog on what you're doing in your life right now, what's bringing you joy, how your life is coming up roses in the springtime.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us for our episode. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll see you in 2. We'll see you in 2.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Good night.
Thanks for listening to It's a Great Day to Talk.
Be sure to follow and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform.
And until next week,
Get out there and talk.
This has been a production from a podcast studio.